Welcome, everybody, to the Becoming Invaluable podcast. It's also available through our website at www.becominginvaluable. And I'm here today. I'm Steve Bowen with my co-author, Dr. Terry Lyles, and our special guest today, Dr. Ginger Decker, which I'm really excited for this conversation. Terry, you've known Ginger for quite some time. Would you like to introduce her, please?
I'd love to. Yeah, I've known her longer than you, actually, and I've known you a long time, but Ginger and I go way back, and we've
Yeah.
done a lot of work together in corporate America and working with health and strength issues, which is exactly where she is in the book about health and strength. So, Ginger, your background is amazing. I mean, you were trained as a chiropractor, went into, the medical science world of understanding nutrition, especially.
Real
Steve,
nutrition, not
real nutrition. Well, we're going to get into that. So,
yeah.
real nutrition, whatever that is. So, we'll let you talk about that. And Steve, you may or may not remember, but she climbed Mount McKinley in Alaska with a bunch of other dudes. And I'd still like to know how all that went, intense and sub-zero weather for a month, and how you survived that. So it's just interesting, your background and what you've done. Yeah, exactly. Mind over mountain. So,
Oh, that's
And
good.
welcome to the show.
I failed to mention Ginger before you introduce yourself. In the book, Dr. Ginger is on page 130 in chapter 5.
Yes.
And you'll find a spotlight on her, which is really a summary of so many great discussions we had with Ginger about her background, her life. And so
Yes.
I'll hand it back to you, Terry. And Ginger.
Yeah. So the health and the strength part, as we talk about this, is mind, body health, mind, body strength. Because a lot of people go right to the physical side. Are you strong? Yes, I'm strong. I've got muscles, I'm strong. Well, how mentally strong are you? How emotionally strong are you? How spiritually strong are you? And the same way with health. There's a mind health, a body health. So we want to get into that a little bit and discuss with you. You're the expert here on why we, wanted you to be in the book. So talk a little bit about your experiences of mind, body, health, and strength, and how it relates to someone becoming invaluable.
Absolutely. So it really goes back to when I was young, when my dad was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer at the age of 48, and he did pass away from it at the age of 48. But I remember my dad he was a strong type A, successful guy, and then the guy in the white coat told him, you've got cancer and it's terminal. And it completely turned him upside down. He was basically preparing for his death. He had a wife and 3 kids. And I watched him go from this strong man to this weak, feeble man who cried all the time. And he had accepted the diagnosis. And that's one of the things that really opened my eyes, because his doctor had given him 6 to 9 months to live. He literally, the day he was diagnosed, he didn't know he had lung cancer. He had been a smoker years ago. He quit smoking, and he got his yearly chest x-ray. That's another story as far as it relates to cancer, getting all those x-rays every year. But he got a chest x-ray, and it was the size of a softball in his lung. And so, but he didn't have any symptoms at that point. But as soon as the doctor told him, you have cancer and you're terminal, it was just this downward spiral. And I remember thinking at the time, like, I don't feel like it's the cancer taking him. I feel like it's my dad's. He's so upset about it, and it's just going down this path that I've never seen him on before. So that was the first eye opener, and that's what really made me want to look into health. But I didn't really like the bedside manner of how everything was handled with him, and I knew there had to be more. And so I kind of went the more holistic. Well, I totally went the holistic route, and I became a chiropractor, and then really got into nutrition, mind body detox, and all of that. So that's kind of the short version of how I got here and why I'm so passionate about what I do. It all started with my dad.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I remember that story when you shared it, and it is so powerful because life and death is such a razor edge fine line. And, Steve and I talk about this a lot when we do these kind of interviews, whether we're being interviewed or we're interviewing others like yourself in the book, that, everything is great until you lose your health or your strength. And then the whole world changes because, you bring energy, you bring passion. And when that goes away, it's really tough. So, Steve, we talk about this, about if you don't have your health, mental health, physical health, I mean, what do you really have? You're holding on to like strings and cables to try to survive. And we want people to thrive from what we have in the book.
I'm really curious, Ginger, when you think about your own life, and I'm sure it's been a journey of a couple of transformations as you've moved through this. I'd love for you to share with our audience about some of those moments that have moved you along the way of getting further and further into the holistic approach.
Well, I will just briefly mention I'm sorry, Terry mentioned that I climbed Mount McKinley in Alaska. And that was the experience of the mind body. I mean, I lived in Florida at the time, and I was like, yeah, I'll come climb this mountain for a charity thing, having no idea what I was really getting myself into. But the way that I mentally pushed my body was unlike anything I'd ever experienced at the time. But the way that it translated back into my regular life, literally for decades, remembering that experience and how much I can do if I just get my mind in the right space.
Mhm.
That's the first thing. The second thing is I had the privilege to teach for quite a few years at Hippocrates Health Institute, which is in West Palm Beach, Florida. It's a healing center, been around over 60 years, probably more than that, actually. At this point, I've been saying 60 years for about 10 years, so maybe it's even close to 70 years. But it's been around for a long time, and they have a similar approach that I have in terms of nutrition, mind body detox, kind of getting the standard American diet and the world out of the way so that the body can do what it's meant to do. And Terry, you mentioned, the devastation when someone's diagnosed with something. But here's
Mhm.
the thing: it doesn't matter what you're diagnosed with; it's whether you own it or not.
Mhm.
I heard a quote the other day: "If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them." Right? Your self-talk is literally like a program that's running, and if you're diagnosed with something, and like my dad was, and he constantly, like, he was planning for that, right?
Right.
Your body will follow, and your body can follow very fast. Within just a couple weeks, it had spread to his bones, and he was in pain. I mean, it just went like fire. So I knew back then the mind can take your body down a bad path when it comes to your health. So no matter what you or your family members are diagnosed with, all that is a name for a series of symptoms that some human being put together. You're a child of God. You have the power within to heal yourself if you just learn the tools. And these are some of the
Yeah.
tools.
Yeah, and I think it's so fascinating that, I commonly say to people, no one survives life. Everybody has an expiration date. You have a born on date and an expiration date. It's just what it is. It's when, how, and where. But to your point, Ginger, we live our healthiness out in our mentality and in our body. And I've met people, and I know we've all known people that live into their 80s and their 90s and they look 60 and they just don't quit. They're just like, I'm not tired. I just do this every day. Like it's like, what is going on with them? Are they freaks of nature? No. No, they have a belief system that is, I'm going to live life to the fullest every day. And I think that's so misstated in the medical world of I need help and medication. Not that medication's bad. I mean, hey, if you need something, you take something. But when you look at your life in totality, like you said, Ginger, our body's meant to heal itself. It's a machine. It recovers if we help it recover. Most of us are just not educated on how to recover. So in our chapters of strength and health, strength comes from that health and health comes from that strength. So talk a little bit about what kind of strength that takes to go against something that, or at least challenge something that may be said in the medical world, to challenge yourself to say, I'm going to live.
So in this world, you kind of have to be a little crazy. I mean, I've been called crazy all my life because of my beliefs, but the crazy thing is today, 2024, is when a lot of the things that I was doing 20 years ago, people want to learn. They're getting it. They're seeing, whether it's family members or themselves, seeing the path. They kind of have to see it for themselves in order to come around and be like, okay, that stuff you've been saying, I want to listen now. I want to learn now, right? And so it's just getting back to the basics. This is stuff that should be taught in school when you're young so that it's something that you can live out, but it's not. And unfortunately, people are finding out, oftentimes when they're diagnosed with something even terminal, or they're finding out when things are just starting to symptoms are just starting to come on, and they're like, okay, I know there's an answer out there. You probably know of someone who beat a disease that they were told they weren't going to, right? So it is possible. I
Yeah.
mean, we just have to think outside the box because society is not letting us do that.
And no one's going to beat life. You live your life. And even if you are diagnosed with something, it's quality of life. It's not always just the number of days you live. And Steve and I talk a lot about this. I mean, I want to live as long as I can, obviously. I love life. I don't want to die younger than I'm supposed to be. I want to live younger longer. But there's a pathway, and it's the quality of your life, not just the quantitative number that you live. And it comes out of that Satchel Paige quote, baseball player. He said, if you didn't know how old you were, how old would you be?
Oh, I like that.
And it's so
Yeah.
I'm
powerful,
29
but
now,
it's simple.
actually.
Yeah.
You know, Ginger, you said something that sparked a thought in my mind, a question. You mentioned, we ought to be learning this stuff in school.
Yeah.
Well, one of my experiences in building my company was teaching people how to set goals. And I always say health comes first, because without health, you can't do God's good work here on earth. And I don't know how many times I've repeated that statement to the same people over and over and over again, but it's so hard to get it into them. And when I think about it, then I would train them in our approach and all of that. And one of the things we trained in was listening. And I would always ask the question, how many of you ever took raise your hand, how many of you ever took a formal class in listening in all your schooling? And, maybe you get one or two out of 15 or 20 people, maybe. And so you spark this thought. I kind of feel the same way about what you're saying, is that it's very rare. And I guess I don't know if it's about where we place our values or what, but this is a really fascinating area that we need to learn more about.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love it because medicine makes things seem so complicated and impossible, right? Or at least a lot of what the world is presented with. And so if we just make it simple, right? You don't have to be a nutritionist, you don't have to be a doctor, you don't have to have any of that background. But if you just learn some basics, I mean, I teach about, so people are constantly handing me supplements and skincare and different things. Can you look at this and tell me if this is good or not? So I started teaching people, if you just know one or two little ingredients, and I could probably teach you a dozen or more, but just if you just know a few of them, you can look at any product and tell if that company has integrity with the ingredients that they're putting in. So it just takes a little bit of knowledge. I get handed, for example, skincare. There's so many chemicals that are put in skincare that are hormone disrupting and can contribute to cancers. And so I teach just some of the main ones. And if you look at your skincare and you see all these things you can't pronounce, but you see those couple of ones, you know what? You probably want to put that back on the shelf, right? And so it's just these little tidbits of simple information that people can remember, because you don't have to know it all, that really can still guide you to great health, to real health.
Yeah, that's really important, because it's not necessarily what you don't know, it's what you know. And it could be, so like you said, so simple. It's like, if it has poison in it,
You want me to give you an example?
put that in.
Let me
Yes.
give you an example.
Yeah.
So if you get a multivitamin, and let's just talk about calcium, and it has calcium carbonate, which is one of the most common, cheapest forms of calcium. It's like cement in your arteries. You do not want that. Put it back. There's one.
Just that's simple.
Yeah, carbonate, calcium carbonate. Skincare. If you see PEG, PEG, and there's sometimes a number after it, PEG 12, PEG
I've
whatever.
seen that. Yeah, I've
You
seen
see
that.
PEG, you put that back. Polyethylene glycol, all kinds of issues with that. You do not want to be putting that on your skin, which gets absorbed into your body. So those are just two, right? And you don't have to know anything else. You just know those two. You'll know if that company has integrity. And that's why I've been formulating supplements and skincare and things for over a decade now, and really learned the nitty gritty of it. But I've learned to get people to choose this over this, you just teach them a few simple things, and they feel like they've got enough knowledge to make an educated decision.
It's so powerful, because the simplicity is what drives the planet. I mean, you really think about it. I mean, oxygen, light, heat, the moisture, it's so simple when you go back to the very basics. And I've heard you say these things a lot, since we've known each other over the years, that we just don't know what something is because it's prefabricated in language. And if you just knew that it was toxic, I mean, just when and it's so scary. I mean, Marsh and I, we read labels. You read labels, you're like, the list is like this long. You're like, what is this?
Possibly know it all.
I mean, you go buy butter. If you eat butter, it's salt and water, and it's like there's nothing.
Hydrogenated oils. Yeah, exactly.
It's like if you got a list that long, it's like, what am I eating? So it's so important. But most people, to your point, Ginger, don't read labels. They buy up the brand they see on TV, they hear on the radio, and because it's the popular brand, and they just don't really look at the ingredients.
Or a trendy ingredient. A lot of companies, this is another little trick they'll do. They will what we call fairy dust, or just put a smidge of a trendy ingredient in their product and plaster that all over the marketing. But it's not even enough in there to give a therapeutic effect. So therapeutic dosing is very important when it comes to supplements too, or you're not going to get the results that you're looking for.
So here's a little more technical question, because I have no idea, but I keep hearing about this product, ashwagandha. Coca-Cola put it into some drink of theirs. I've seen it now in protein bars. I'm just curious, is ashwagandha really a good thing or is it not? I have no idea.
Ashwagandha is a good thing. Again, you've got to know the sourcing, because you can get, there's different qualities of it. But that being said, ashwagandha is really good in terms of mood, right? De-stressing. Yeah. It's an herb. So yeah, it's in teas, it's in tinctures. You said Coke put it in? Coca-Cola put it in there?
Coca-Cola it's not Coca-Cola itself. It's one of the brands that they own, and I can't remember the brand right now. So they put ashwagandha into the drink. And then there's a power bar company out there called Atlas Bars, and they have ashwagandha and almost no sugar, and seems like a good product. But when we're all looking at this stuff, it's hard to know. So you mentioned,
you can call me anytime, Stephen.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned the label and text it to me. People do that all the time. Is this good?
In our book, Becoming Invaluable, we talk about not only the health, strength, and worth. Underneath of that, as a foundation, yes, we talk about purpose and values and vision and all of that. But maybe more importantly, because this is what I hear you talking about, we talk about knowledge, skills, and attitude. And what I hear you saying is that, like if we spent 10 minutes even every day reading a little something about health, like you're talking about, and building our knowledge.
Absolutely.
I don't know what the skill is I would have around medical stuff. Eating, I'm pretty good at it. Right. Drinking, I really like that a lot, but that's probably not the best thing for me. But attitude, because knowledge affects attitude, right? So just talk to us a little bit more about that. How do people go about educating them? You're educating them. How do you go about helping to educate them too?
Well, I do lectures and seminars and different things, and I'm kind of going through a rebranding right now. But I'll be out there on social media, kind of putting out little tidbits and on YouTube and all of that. But I just try to spread the word and make it simple so other people can repeat it to other people, right? To their family members. Here's another thing that people are not aware of. Every medication that you take, whether it's over the counter or prescription, and don't stop taking any medications without consulting your doctor, but every time you're taking that, when it metabolizes, it draws certain nutrients from your body. And over time, if it's something you take every day for years and decades, you'll end up with that nutrient deficiency, which will cause other signs and symptoms, and your doctor will prescribe another drug for those signs and symptoms, not realizing the first drug caused the problem. So it's little things like that. That's why nutrition is so important, because we don't realize what we're doing in today's modern world. And so, these little tidbits of information are important. Yeah. I'll come back anytime and give you some more tidbits.
Yeah. and before we wrap up, you said something over and over again. I've heard you say so many times, and I know you've done training on these processes of how the mind and the body kind of connect together and work together. But, it's so simple when you think about cardiopulmonary effect. We have to breathe oxygen and we have blood. So blood and oxygen marry together, and it becomes this really cool product that keeps us flowing. Like oxygen or air flow into the engine of the car, like, fuel that fuels it, like oil that keeps it cool, and viscosity. Talk a couple of minutes about brain blood flow, heart blood flow, and everything.
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, you know where I'm going. So I'm not going to blow your thunder here.
Where is he going? I know exactly. So, okay. So when I was doing corporate wellness, I I worked with Speedway Motorsports, Sonic Automotive, as car dealerships. And so I went around to car dealerships I was helping to lower their overall healthcare costs. Well, obviously at car dealerships, the majority of the people that worked there were male. There were some females in there. And they were all required to come to my lunch and learn. And they weren't happy about it. They'd come in with their sodas and their fries, and, they had to sit there during lunch when I was in town. And what I started to realize after just doing a couple of them is that, the people weren't really the guys weren't really paying attention, and I needed to talk about something that would grab their attention. So the next one that I went to, I walked in, I introduced myself, and I said, okay, guys, there's something that we're going to talk about today that I don't think you're making the connection with, but you really need to. Today, we're going to talk about erectile dysfunction. And yeah, exactly. That's
They're
exactly.
all like, wait, drop the fry. You're like, what?
Yeah. And I'm like, I've dissected an entire body. I have no problem talking about every part of it, including that. So let's just make an analogy here. When you have a stroke, it's a blocked vessel in the brain, blood vessel in the brain, right? When you have a heart attack, it's a blocked blood vessel in your heart. When you have erectile dysfunction, there's issues with blood flow to that particular part, right? And so, but we are a full circulatory system. So if you have heart disease, guess what? You probably have erectile dysfunction, or if you don't, you're going to get it if we don't take care of that. So the idea of making positive health changes in a male audience and getting them to actually want to do something, that's what you got to talk about. I'm sorry to say, it worked. We got people actually taking steps.
She stimulated them to think with their brain to
That's
say,
right.
wow, if I have ED, I may have cardiac issues completely and don't know it. Maybe I need to go get a checkup. You see, and Steve,
or even the other way around. Some of them were maybe on heart medication, and they're like, "Oh, I'm not getting that," right?
Exactly. So that's the power of just knowing a little tidbit. What Ginger talks about a lot, just knowing one little piece of information could literally save your life or preserve it for years if you just knew what you didn't know.
And I think after the pandemic deal, many more people are paying attention to their health, obviously their immune system, but they're a lot more open today. So this is a time right now for those listening to take those steps, because the information is out there. Even the stuff that I talk about, more and more people are talking about it, more and more people want to hear about it. And so, open your eyes, open your ears, and just start learning some tidbits. Start homesteading, right? Start growing your own garden. I mean, there's more of that happening today than ever before.
Yeah. So Steve, I mean, our book, Becoming Invaluable, that's why we have Ginger in the book, because she's incredible. She's got her book. Look at her. She's in it. She's on page 130, And it's funny because you're in that chapter, but you kind of close that chapter out because health and strength it's actually the three parts of the triangle. So health, strength, and self-worth, as we call it, worth. So you're the bottom piece of this whole structure.
Put it all up. Right?
That holds everything. It's the foundation of it. So
it really is, though. It really is.
Thank you, Dr. Ginger, for being on with us. How do people find you? I'm sure they're going to be fascinated to know more about who you are and what you do and what you know.
So like I said, I'm kind of doing a rebranding right now, but I do actually have befitbootcamp.online for those of you who don't want to work out at a gym but would love to do it in a private Facebook group. We have some certified personal trainers, which are fantastic. They kind of do faith and fitness kind of together in that group. So befitbootcamp.online. And every month we have a new class, and you just sign up, and then we put you in the group, and you can wear whatever you want. No one's going to see you. You just see the instructors teaching. So it's becoming a lot of fun, and it's really growing. And then my new Instagram is at Natural Health Teacher. I have yet to really post things, but I did set that up because, like I said, I'm in the middle of rebranding. But that right now, that's where you can find things.
Great.
Well, Dr. Ginger, thank you so much for joining us here today, joining Terry and I. It's always a fascinating conversation when you're chatting with us, and I hope that everybody out there has found it just as fascinating. Again, this is the Becoming Invaluable podcast. We truly want to help you become invaluable in your life. We hope you enjoy the book and reach out to us. And thank you again, Dr. Ginger.
My pleasure. Great to see you.
BecomingValuable.com. You find us. Steve, thank you. Appreciate what you do and all the people that we're able to reach, all of us. We're just all trying to make the world a better place and be healthier and wiser and impactful for people in our lives. So thank both of you for being here with us today.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks,
Appreciate it,
Ginger.
guys.
Bye, guys.
Thanks. Have a good
All
one.
right. Bye-bye.